everyone, I'm Ginger Balch from In Sheep's Clothing Yarn Shop in Torrington, welcoming you to another episode of Focus on Fiber. Today I'm so excited to introduce my guest Pam Grushkin of Pam Grushkin Knits. Pam's designs can be found on her website, her blog, and her Ravelry page. She can also be found at Westport Yarns where she works. Hey Pam.
Hi Gail. Ginger, I'm sorry.
We see each other so often.
I'm sorry. Hi Ginger, how are you?
I'm great. So I'm really excited about having you here today. Every time I've ever seen you, you're always knitting away like crazy because you're always so busy with your designs and things. And today's the only day I've ever seen you not knitting.
It's true, and I'm having an internal panic attack by not having my security knitting.
Well, you've got knitting around you,
I do,
so that should give you a little bit of comfort.
I am.
So anyway, I don't know an awful lot about you, so this is a great opportunity for you to tell me something about yourself and how long you've been knitting, how you got started.
Sure, thank you. I learned to knit when I was 12 and my sister was 8. Our mother taught us. And I have fond memories of going to the yarn store together and picking out our project and then coming home and knitting them. And we were disciplined to only have one project at a time because Mom just wasn't going for 2 at a time. So
absolutely, not then.
Not then. And I've never left well enough alone. Whenever I knit a pattern, I'm always tweaking it. My mother was a fashion designer, so that was kind of a okay thing. It wasn't a big deal to change something up because she was always designing things herself. So we were always encouraged to do our own thing.
So you come by all this naturally, biologically.
Biologically, yes.
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
I didn't know that about your mom.
Yeah.
That's very great. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've brought a whole bunch of things to show us.
I have lots of show and tell.
So we're going to start, since we're still in the middle of summer here, we're going to start out with your summer piece here that you've got. And go ahead and tell us about it.
Sure. Well, this is a piece I designed for Taki Stacy Charles, and it was featured in this spring-summer booklet, which is right here. It's called Sea Breeze. And the patterns are also available online on Ravelry or Taki's website as a single pattern purchase. So you don't have to buy the booklet if you don't love everything, but you probably will.
Right, okay.
And I would start by saying when I designed for Taki, they start out by giving me a tear, what they call a tear inspiration.
Oh,
so I get what that is. It can take the form of an email and it'll be a picture. And it could be a picture that's from a magazine or somewhere that they came across.
So they have an inspiration that they're giving you to
Correct.
work on.
They study the design trends and the design colors, and then I receive some kind of tear inspiration. And sometimes it's as detailed as to what the depth of the armhole is.
Oh, really?
The depth of the back and the neck, where it sits on the hip. And sometimes that's left to my own interpretation.
Okay.
And every time I get a new tear sheet, we go over that together through a lot of emails.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, that's nice to have that much guidance.
It is.
Okay.
It is helpful, and it's always interesting to see what they send me. So it starts out with a swatch. And this is actually a very tiny swatch. Usually I'm making them about 8 inches by 8 inches.
Right.
And we all know how much we hate gauge. Gauge is the
Swatches.
knitting equivalent of a 4-letter word.
Yes.
But when you're making a design, you need to swatch a really big swatch because it's fabric that you're creating, and a 4x4 swatch isn't going to give you a true enough indication of what a full-size garment is going to do.
Right.
So we start out with a swatch, and I'll probably work it up on different needle sizes and send them up-close pictures of the swatches.
Now, do you wash it too? I mean, when you do the swatching,
it depends on the yarn.
Okay.
It depends on the yarn. If it's something I want blocked, but I do want to see what's going to happen when it is washed because that can change people's experience. And I don't want one of my patterns to come through with, I washed it and it, whatever.
That's right, because it reflects back on you.
Right. And so that's important. And then they'll look at the gauges and they'll say, well, we like the one done on this needle with this gauge, and go ahead.
Oh, so it starts right at the gauge. They want to see that before you even proceed.
Oh, yes. Yeah, everything is managed.
Wow.
And then as I go along, if I'm knitting it and I feel that there's an aspect of it that will not appeal to a knitter or is not realistic, because we're trying to strike a balance between knitability and fashion. And working in a yarn store and teaching, I'm keenly aware of that balance. So, you know, if I'm knitting it and I say, you know, you have this idea for it, but that's just not going to work realistically for someone to knit it that way.
Right.
This would be more realistic. And then,
Right.
so as I'm designing, I'm also knitting it and writing it simultaneously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't write that down, you're going to forget it.
You never remember it. If you don't write it down, it doesn't happen.
Right. Let's take a look at the back.
Yes. And so, again, given that I don't leave well enough alone, this is my own design, but I've tweaked it because, you know, when I'm designing for someone else, I have to do what they want.
Right.
And then when I knit it for myself, there might be something I want. So I'll show you in their picture in the magazine. This is how it was featured in the magazine.
Okay.
Okay, as a loose racerback top done in kind of oceanside colors, you know, very pastel, pretty colors.
Now, this is where they get other knitters to knit your design.
Correct.
So they have
I
these.
send them my finished garment. They send me the yarn in the
Right.
color they choose for the story in the book. So all the colors fit.
Right.
And then they have other knitters make the other samples that would go in.
Right. Pretty colors. Really
It is
nice
pretty
summer.
colors. I am a purple person, so mine had to be in purple.
Okay.
But as you can see, mine is much, much longer. I decided I wanted a beach cover-up.
Oh, okay,
So
perfect.
instead of
Perfect.
making the medium, I made a large and I made it longer.
Okay.
So it's a beach cover-up. And I'm very happy with it. I've worn it and was well received, so I'm pleased with that.
Yeah.
And this is a great yarn to knit with. It's called Ripple.
I see that it's very textured.
It's very textured. It's a thick, thin yarn.
Yeah. Just see behind. There you go.
Okay, so you don't have to do any work. So for this yarn,
It does it for you.
it's the design that does the work. So you
Right.
can see this is the yarn doing all the work. Straight stockinette is the best vehicle for this because you're not going to see anything else is almost a waste of your time.
Right. Exactly. No, very pretty.
So yeah, and it's a fun piece. It's an easy piece. It's very simple. It's knit in the round up to the armholes, and then you have some shaping to do, but it's all well laid out.
Perfect for beach knitting.
Perfect for beach knitting. Right.
Okay.
So that was that one. And in the same book, we have a poncho, and it's called, beg your pardon, the Center Port Cropped Poncho.
Okay.
Okay. And ponchos, as you know, are really big right now.
Yes.
And I think as knitters and women, we like ponchos because they fit us regardless of we want to wear our clothes. It's an easy accessory. You don't have to worry about your size. It's a very friendly garment to knit. So their vision for this, again, I got a tear sheet.
Okay.
So this was the picture that I got
Okay.
of their vision for this poncho.
Okay.
Okay, so in this poncho, they told me the pattern stitch they want me to use. They don't often tell me specifically the pattern stitch.
Okay.
Often I look at the picture and kind of divine through stitch dictionaries and swatching what I'd like to do.
Right.
But in this one, they told me the pattern stitch, and they also told me that they wanted it cropped.
Right.
Okay. And I loved working with the yarn. The yarn is called Aruba, and it's a cotton linen blend.
Oh, love cotton linen.
I do too.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a stepchild. Linen and cotton, people kind of are afraid of it, but it was a pleasure to knit with. It was on a big needle, and it went fast.
Okay.
And it was easy knitting.
How big a needle? About.
I think an 8, or could have been an 8 or a 10.
Okay.
See, again, if it's,
Nice,
it's written
easy.
down, so I don't have to
Right.
look at it. So now, again, this is my poncho.
Okay.
So
And it is connected just a little bit here for the.
not in the pattern.
Okay.
Again, so
Little
again,
tweak, yes.
a little tweak.
Yeah,
It's-
because otherwise it could
it's
kinda
flowy,
shift
but
around a
that
little
was
bit.
their vision.
That was, yes.
So for my personal version of it,
Right.
I made it longer because I'm of an age where I really don't wear cropped things. And so I made it longer.
Right.
And when I put it on and shared it with some women I knit with, we all decided that tacking the armholes would be a much better
Right.
plan.
Right. You could
So-
probably even throw a couple button or. I've
could.
seen a bunch now
You
that have
could.
buttons on them and
You
stuff
could.
too.
So
But
I just
that's
tacked
great.
it. And
But just a little something so that you don't really even notice that it's tacked.
correct.
But
And
it's
it's
doing
and
what
it
you
still
need it to
and
do.
it still flows, but it is more becoming.
Yes.
It's more. It just looks better.
Yeah.
Now this stitch pattern And this poncho we're going to redo at Westport Yarns for the fall
Okay.
in Blue Sky Fibers Extra, which is a gorgeous alpaca merino blend.
Oh, nice.
And we're going to make a winter version of it.
Nice.
Because it's really just a very versatile piece.
Right, and I did not mention that. Well, I did kind of before in the intro that you work at Westport Yarns.
I do work at Westport
How long
Yarns.
have you been working there for?
I've been there for, I think, 7 years.
Oh,
No,
okay.
more. 8 years?
Uh-huh.
A long time.
It goes
Yeah,
by when
it
you're
goes
having
by.
a good time.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 And I worked there. I've worked there through 2 owners. Cynthia Crescenzo owned it and started it initially about 12 years ago, and Beth Schaefer bought it about 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were there at the beginning then?
I've been there at the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like when you're in a yarn shop, working in a
Yes.
yarn shop. It's
Yes.
not really work.
No,
It's-
there's
you have the best
a
of both worlds.
Correct. You do.
You have a job and
Yes, you get to see all the yarns come in. It's like Christmas in
Yes.
July, because really now we're getting the fall yarns, so
Yes.
it really is like Christmas in July, and it's great fun to see all the new yarns and the possibilities, and it's,
yeah.
it's a pleasure to go in and be just faced with all that inspiration.
yeah. Yes, it's a good time.
It's a good time.
So, so you've decided what kind of wool that you're going to make this
Correct,
in.
correct.
But you also have this garment
Yes.
here. These two
Yes,
garments here
this
that are in
was
wool.
from last year, Taki's Fall.
Okay.
And it is probably the only time that I'll be able to say that I am a cover girl.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is very exciting.
Oh, enormously exciting. Great ego boost.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This is a wonderful, wonderful sweater, which even though it's last year's, I wanted to bring it in because
It's a classic.
it's a classic, but with a few details that kind of contemporize it.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of top-down,
Oh, okay.
because it is a lot of fun to knit, and there are no seams, and you can try it on as you go.
Oh, that's great.
So,
So you started with
you
the...
start at the neck,
the
not
neck?
the collar, the neck.
Oh,
you start
okay.
at the neck.
Okay.
So literally your cast on is a few stitches for your shoulders, a few stitches for your back,
Right.
and so on. And you just start and you build out with increases that go down.
Create your raglan.
Yep, raglan increases. It's just great fun. What I did to contemporize it is I did a twisted ribbing and knitted in the back.
So beefed up the ribbing.
And I doubled the yarn.
That's what I'm thinking. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm thinking, how
Yeah.
did it get that fat with all that?
But I
Okay,
kept it on the
great.
same needle size that the garment was knit on.
Nice.
So it's a denser,
Right.
but it just looks a little more interesting.
Yeah.
In the pattern, it sits about mid-hip. Mine I made a little longer. I just like things longer. What I love about the top neck up here, you've knit this, it's a turtleneck, but it's not a turtleneck. It's kind of, to me, like a turtle boat neck.
Yeah, it's wide.
It's wide. And what you do is you knit it twice as long, and it's folded on the inside and sewn.
Okay.
So we all know that at a certain point in life, you get hot and you don't want things around your neck. So
Right.
you don't really want to wear a turtleneck. What I love about this sweater is that it sits further around your neck. So you
Yeah,
don't
actually,
have...
I'm kind of looking on the model here,
Yeah.
and it's definitely lower.
It's lower, and
yeah,
it
fits
doesn't
nicely.
sit tight against your neck, so you're not feeling the heat
Right.
of it. So you've got the warmth of the sweater, the look of a turtleneck, but you don't have that...
Right.
Feeling
And
of-
speaking of feeling,
Yeah.
that yarn feels very yummy.
It is wonderful. It is wonderful. It is called Tahoe by Taki. And as life is, this wonderful yarn has been discontinued.
Of course.
Yes. We find at Westport Yarns that when we sell a yarn like gangbusters and loved it, it gets discontinued.
Yeah.
We
And that
have-
happens for all different kinds of reasons.
but at
Some
any
that
rate,
make no sense.
Does not make sense. It's a beautiful yarn, and if you'd like to knit the sweater, it's knit in an Aran weight yarn. And I spoke with Stacey Charles and asked him what a reasonable substitute is,
Right.
and he said that they have a yarn, Lena, Lena, that is a blend. This is a blend as well, and that would be a reasonable substitute. But any Aran weight yarn.
Okay.
And again, as we
Maybe
discussed,
something that has a little fluff to it to kind of...
it can.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to.
No,
And
okay.
actually, the fluff in this is not a. It's not a. Where's it hiding? Mohair that gives it the fluff. This is nylon wool, baby alpaca, and yak.
Okay, that's why it feels so yummy.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yak is becoming very big. So it's a beautiful blend. And again, it starts out with a tear sheet for inspiration.
Oh, look at the collar. I like your collar way better than that one, and I like your sleeves way better than that one.
Well, again,
Yeah.
as I've said, sometimes they give me very definitive guidelines, as in the racerback, exactly what they want, and sometimes
Right.
I'm left to my own devices.
Right.
And I have a group of women that are in my life that I get their opinions on these things as I go in because I value their input.
Right.
One of my coworkers is very fashion forward, so I always get her input. And my mother, being a fashion designer, whenever I get one of these tear sheets, I immediately send it to her and say, okay, let's talk. What do you see in this picture? And we discuss what would work, what do we think it is.
What a nice
Oh,
bond
it's
that must
amazing.
make.
It's
Wow.
really it's a treasure, and it just gives me a good sounding board. So in this picture, we agreed when I spoke with my coworkers as well that we're just not going to wear this.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just
I can see that definitely going down the runway.
not down the runway, but not into the shop.
Right, exactly.
So when that happens, I kind of ask them, what are the design elements in this that brought you to this picture?
Right.
Because I want to, I want to make what they envision or something that meets their vision. So the collar was really important. That it was not fitted was important. So this is got some ease to it. So it's it's not a fitted garment.
Okay.
There's no waist shaping or anything like that.
Right.
So again, as I've discussed earlier, they get a swatch, and I will knit several of them to show them different needle sizes to try and be proactive and not have them say, oh, well, I want to see that on a needle up, or I want to see that on a needle down.
Right.
I'd rather save time and present them with various swatches and then
Right.
let them pick.
Sure.
So, and again, this swatch, I did not do the twisted ribbing.
Oh, right, you didn't. Right.
So that was one of my earlier swatches.
Okay.
And it just didn't look interesting.
You're right. That totally makes it.
It just kind of
yes.
makes it like, okay,
Step
it's
up.
just a vanilla sweater.
Right.
But just that little bit of a twist and doubling the yarn makes it have more appeal.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So,
You just made me realize just how that little difference
Yeah.
can make something, like I was saying before, a classic sweater, be
Right.
upgraded a little bit.
Yes.
Be a little bit
Right.
fresher looking.
well, because, as a knitter, we want to knit things that are unusual or interesting. You don't want to knit something that you can buy in the store for a fraction of the cost.
Right.
Because I'm a yarn snob, and I like to knit with really good yarns.
Yes.
Okay, that's
I
just the
agree
way it
with
is. But I
There's
don't.
a thing on Ravelry, on Facebook that I've been seeing that they say life's too short to work with cheap yarn.
It's really true.
And I totally, yes, amen, yes, that's exactly it.
Very true.
Yes, yes.
So so this is a nice yarn. Feels good. Pleasure to work with.
Yeah. And then I see that you have one other sweater over here too.
I do. I brought this sweater with me. This was actually the first thing that I designed for Taki.
Wow.
And when you get this close up, please be kind when you see little yarn fuzzballs and random acts of dog hair.
That just shows it's a well-loved sweater.
It is a well-loved sweater.
And knitters love to, their pets always like to be right next to them
Yes,
when
they do.
you are knitting.
Yes, they
So
do.
it
Sometimes
just
on the knitting.
goes hand in hand.
So this was an 11th hour decision to bring this one.
love
And
it.
it's a really great sweater. I'm just going to hold it up
I love.
so you can see the detail.
I love how you have this section here at the waist that
Yes.
nips it in a little bit
Yes.
without
Correct.
nipping it in.
Right.
Very nice.
And
I
again,
like
you've
it.
got a kind of a classic shawl-collared long jacket cardigan, but that little detail brings it up,
Yeah.
works it up. And this pattern is free on Ravelry, and it's knit with obviously a tweed, an Aran weight tweed. It seems like all these were done Aran weight now that I think about it.
Well, I think a lot of, I don't know, maybe we're going in the other direction a little bit. It's either heavier yarns, or a lot of them are really, really lightweight yarns.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. This was the first one, as I said, that I did for them. and it actually made the top page in Ravelry for a couple of weeks.
Oh, that is so exciting. That is really, really exciting.
It was incredible.
And for those people that, Ravelry is like this website for knitters, crocheters, and now they've opened it up to spinners and weavers as well. And it's a great resource to find patterns.
Yes.
And you have a Ravelry page.
I do have a Ravelry page. You can search for me in the Patterns tab for my name, Pam Grushkin. My username is Live Laugh Knit. Feel free to friend me. And it's a great, it was an unbelievable high to see my sweater there.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
That is very exciting.
Very exciting. It's like being in a front, it's as good as being
that's
on
a
front
big deal.
page.
That
It's a
means
big
that
deal.
you are on top there.
Yes.
People are
That I-
looking at your design, wanting to make your design,
Correct. Yes.
making your design.
Yes.
Do you ever look at, okay, so your pattern, there's a place on Ravelry that when you look at somebody's design, and then it'll say projects up on the top, and there's a number of how many people have made that or are
Yes.
making it.
Yes.
That's got to be like a real ego booster.
Oh, it is. It is. And if they favorite it, and there's also a tab as a designer called User Activity, and you can see if people have marked it as a favorite, put it in their queue,
Okay.
wrote a forum post, so you can kind of see what people have said
nice.
about it. You can address, you can comment, have conversations back with them about it.
Oh, that is
Yeah.
so great.
Yeah.
That is, wow. You are a real gem at Westport
Oh,
Knits for
thank
sure.
you. Thank you.
They must love the fact that, I mean, they've got all this great, PR for them
Yes.
in the work that you do.
Yes.
And I'm sure that you're always busy doing, making samples and things for
Yes,
them.
and
like I said,
and
you're always knitting.
Always knitting, and being a designer, sometimes if there's a niche that we need to fill in the shop, that will be brought to me and say, oh,
Right.
Pam can figure that one out.
Right.
Pam can make it. It's like the Mikey commercial. Mikey likes it. Pam can do it.
That's right.
But that's fun. It's a nice compliment to my ability, and
Oh, sure.
yeah.
Sure. And it certainly makes your, Westport Knits unique.
Yes. Yes.
mean-
And a lot of us design in the shop, but people do like that. People, when, you say, oh, I'm in the Talkie book, people get very excited about that.
Oh, yeah. Gives you a lot of
And,
credibility
It
to,
does.
to do
And I
that.
can remember knitting Talkie things as a kid growing up, so it was really
See, so it's come full
circle. And I have to say, the first time I met Stacy Charles, who is the nicest man you ever want to meet, I didn't know if I should curtsy, genuflect, something, just because he's just such a big part of the industry, and his designs have a good reputation for clear patterns and being fashion current or forward. Yeah.
So you've had an opportunity to go to, to New York and
I met
or at
him,
shows.
Met him at shows. I met
Okay.
him at the TNNA, our trade show.
Okay.
Once, and I met him there, and I took a picture of him with my sweater.
Oh,
which was
how
very
nice.
cool.
Yeah. You're gonna have quite the scrapbook.
It is. It's exciting. Every now and then I'll see, how many designs are on my Ravelry page, and I'll be like, really?
I
Designed
look-
that many?
I looked and I don't remember now how many there actually
in the
were.
70s.
That's very impressive.
Yeah.
That's very impressive. Wow. Well, I am just so thrilled that you were here today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
Oh, and thank you so much for, telling us exactly what it takes to get into, well, actually not what it takes to get into that.
Correct.
We'll have to talk to you about that another time,
Sure.
too, is how you
Sure.
actually got that foot in the door.
Sure.
But the fact that you're doing this on a regular basis is very, very interesting and very exciting for
It
you.
is very exciting. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
Well, I sure hope that you enjoyed spending your time with me and my guest, Pam Grushkin. I hope that you will take a look at her work on her website and her Ravelry page. Thank you again, and don't forget that it's always important to keep a focus on fiber. See you next time.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.